with us today, and you can join at your leisure. We have Max Alexander from Capital One, Alex Kluru from Gorgeous, and Emily Nagashima from Honeycomb. So I have met all of you except for Max. So Max, it's very nice to see your actual face, not your LinkedIn one. But thank you all for joining us. So the kind of general topic of this is just how do we set goals around engineering effectiveness? And I think if you had the opportunity to listen to some of the earlier talks, there's been a lot of talk around this, I think. And so I wanted to dig into it with this group. So first, real quick intros though. Max, you can go first.
Hi, my name is Max. I work at Capital One on developer experience, and once upon a time I wrote a thing called the LinkedIn Developer Productivity and Happiness Framework. I've done a lot of stuff with metrics and feedback systems and a lot of developer experience stuff.
All right, well, great to have you. Emily, how about you?
Hi, I'm Emily. Very happy to be here. I'm VP of Engineering at Honeycomb, and I'm also a metrics and observability nerd. So it has been fun to take that from the like front end engineering part of my career now to the people management part of it.
Lucky you. Oh, and we have a podcast with both Emily and Alex as well. If you want to hear more from them, Max, we'll get you in the lineup in this next season.
Mine is not that interesting, but happy to be here. Happy to be here. So yeah, I'm Alex. I'm the co-founder and CTO at Gorgeous. We make CRM for e-commerce businesses, like primary use case, like Shopify businesses and Magento and all of that. Primary use case is customer service, but we also have like marketing products as well. So happy to be here, talk about developer productivity and happiness and everything else. Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us from Argentina. Is that still true?
It is, yes. I'm in Buenos Aires. We actually have an office here. I'm going back to New York next week. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. So let's start first with there's so many tabs. Max, I'm going to start with you. And you worked on the framework at LinkedIn, and now you're working on developer productivity and experience at Capital One. How do you advise teams when it comes to setting goals around developer experience and developer productivity? What does a good goal look like, and what does a bad goal look like?
Sure. So generally what I advise teams on is you should definitely understand the specific problems that your team has. Like you can start with something like the DORA metrics. You could start with lead time for change, but you want to understand what are the capabilities that your team lacks that are causing those numbers to look bad. Not just like, hey, go release faster. Like that doesn't solve the problem. Like if you're like, it's fine to set a goal that says, hey, we want to drive down lead time for change, as long as you're doing that either with the understanding that the way that you're going to accomplish that is by affecting capabilities, or by setting particular goals around particular capabilities. Like maybe one of the problems is that there's low ownership on one of your repositories, as an example. And so people wait forever to get code reviews because there's really like no actual person who works on that. Like maybe the team is oversubscribed. And so maybe what you actually want to do is look at, the number of repositories that you actually work on, or you balance out sort of allocation or something like that. So generally I would say, but also it's also possible that in some teams lead time isn't your problem. Like maybe you have a quality issue, and then you need to think about like, how do we know when we have a quality issue? So in many cases, it's not just about setting a goal. Like it's about knowing what your team's goal is. Like, what are you trying to actually accomplish? And then understanding how well you're doing that with the lens of developer productivity. So if my goal is to, deliver widgets, beautiful widgets to many people, then what's the feedback on the widgets? Do they fail? Things like that.
Emily, how about what does this look like at Honeycomb? How you've been Swarmia users for a couple of years, and how are you using that to figure out how are you setting goals, or are you setting goals, or how are you using Swarmia to kind of understand your productivity situation?
Yeah, I think part of what Max said actually is such a good call out for us too, which is like a lot of times it is really helpful to start with that narrative of like, what is the problem we all agree on that we want to fix? And I think like when I first started working with Swarmia, I sort of had my own secret list of problems that I was like really concerned about that I wanted to sort of like have a better window into. And an initial miss was like failing to really tell my team about that so I could get them excited about the tool. And I have since learned to say, hey, these are a couple of big things that we all agree are important. Like we're trying to drive stronger adoption of our design system. That's a good one. We think that it will, make developers' lives easier, make the product look better, and, be easier to interact with. And we think it'll be a productivity boost. And so we can just say that, and that resonates with people. And then it's much easier to sort of hang the specific metrics that we have as a goal off of that. Or, we're also onboarding this year. So thinking about helping people get productive in our code base more quickly. And then that really dials down that the conspiracy theory muscle we talked about earlier in Mary's talk, I think. That way, we sort of all have both the number we're shooting for, but also the talk track in mind.
Alex, anything you would add there?
Yeah, so I think metrics are important. There's I would say two types, and I think Swarmia does both of them pretty good, like the qualitative and the quantitative ones. So there's the survey functionality, then there's also of course DORA metrics and the cycle time and all of that type of stuff. So I think it's absolutely super valuable. But one thing that is not talked often about is also you as an engineering manager. Do you yourself experience the pain of developing stuff on, as your engineers do? So basically, it's do you also have essentially the direct experience? Because what I mean, and this is, I've been guilty of this, kind of being a bit too high level. There's a lot of engineers, so I'm okay, I need to do this roadmap planning and setting up OKRs and all of that type of stuff. So it's you suddenly forget that the CI is taking 2 hours to run or whatever, right? So it's I would say beyond just the metrics, and which I think they're super valuable and confirms perhaps some of your intuition already. I think it's experiencing the pain that engineers have day to day, or even better, it's the people who are new, who join the team and actually have to set up the environment from scratch and kind of learn things from scratch. I think it's quite insightful too. So that's another way to look at things. It's okay, you experience yourself, you get anecdotal evidence from a survey, then you also look at the metrics. I think all of them are valuable insights.
Yeah. So Alex, I'm curious, when you notice that you have a challenge around productivity or experience among your developers, what kind of interventions have you seen work? And I'm especially curious about interventions at the team level versus the organization level.
That's an excellent question and quite relevant because we have a similar discussion right now. The way I look at it, but I'm probably wrong, so I'm curious actually to hear what Max and Emily has to say about this. But the way I look at it is that, and I'm sure this is going to be controversial to some people, but when I look at, there's this function which is called QA, which I personally think is an anti-pattern and removes some responsibility from the engineers themselves when it comes to ensuring that the code is actually works and the customer is actually using what they ship and there's no issues and so forth. I think when it comes to developer experience itself, it's kind of similar. So basically, it's if people say, yeah, developer experience is sort of, let's hire someone developer experience, and they will do. I'm sure Max will disagree here. So I'm curious to see the debate. But I would say probably he wouldn't. But I would say it's it's the responsibility of everyone. Everyone needs to understand that developer experience is not just oh yeah, let's hire Max and he will take care of everything. It's no, it's actually, he may probably take care of the global approach strategy, but really everyone needs to get involved. And for the simple reason that the engineers that work on their code base, they know the code base the best. They know the problems the best. They know what, and probably also the solution to those problems, right? So it's and the approach to take here is well, we need to dedicate some part of a roadmap to fix some of those big issues, right? Some things you can just opportunistically fix, but some things they absolutely need to be on the roadmap, potentially on a multi-quarter roadmap, right? To actually get addressed. So the way I look at it is more QA, a little bit developer. QA is the responsibility to everyone, developer experience is the responsibility to everyone, and productivity as well.
So Max, I think you've been called out. What are your...
All right. Well, so I could probably just sit here and talk about this for an hour with no
easily.
prompting.
Yes,
Easily, right?
I'll do management. Don't worry.
Yeah. But I will see if I can constrain my answer. So let's first go with the lens that you talked about, which is org versus team. So generally, like the developer productivity org can provide tools and standards for things that should be standardized. Now, the things that should be standardized is a whole talk. Like what should and shouldn't be standardized is a whole discussion that we can, like a whole very long discussion. But what the central team can't do is they can't fix your code base. So like they're not going to come and write your tests for you. They're not going to come and refactor your code. They're not going to come and delete all of that legacy cruft that you have in your code base. That has to be the responsibility of the tech leads and the engineers who are working on that system. And there's also a non-technical aspect of this in both places. So, and I think one of the things that developer productivity orgs sometimes miss is that there is a very, very much a human aspect of developer productivity. You know, at one of my jobs, me and some of my other leads used to joke that we spent more of our time being human engineers than we did being software engineers, because you don't, like, a lot of people with a lot of experience in developer productivity, they know what the destination state looks like, but the hard part is how do you get from here to there? And a lot of that is how do you manage the human process and experience of change? And the larger an org is, the more complicated that aspect of it is. It's on a small team, it often is somewhat easier. There's still a bit of resistance. You know, you're like, hey, we're going to start having more, sometimes you're going from having no code reviews to we're going to do code reviews. Sometimes you're going from we've literally written no tests to we're going to start writing tests. And that can be a bit of a pushback and a conversation, and you're going to have to justify it to your management and stuff like that. But, you know, at the end of the day, very often there is a point at which you're like, well, hey, I'm the tech lead. Just try it my way for a few months and see how you feel about it. And you can kind of like lay that in stone. When you're the developer productivity org, you often can't, because the rest of the company doesn't report to you. You are a service provider for them. So you have to go out and, you know, use a lot of the techniques of PR and marketing and product development. Like, imagine that the rest of the company are your customers.
Yep.
When would they pay for your product?
Yeah, I love that framing. And I think that, you know, productivity is a product. Your software development lifecycle is a product. Whether anybody designed it or owned it is a different question, but it is a product with users. And lucky for you, you can talk to those users on Slack in most cases, right? You don't have to go out into the whole wide world to talk to them. So I think that's a really great point. Emily, I'm curious from you, how do you work with your product partners? One of the things, like in Swarmia, there's the investment balance, and you can see how much you're working on KTLO versus all these other things, right? How are you working with your product partners to kind of help them understand the need for investing in productivity, and to help them set reasonable goals and objectives that take that into account?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'll say I'm really lucky here because my product counterpart, Graham Senior, he was at Pivotal for a long time, and so he really sort of like deeply lives and breathes like developer experience in a way that not every product partner does. So
yeah.
A little bit of cheating, but I would say actually a really valuable thing for us was advocating, and we had to advocate for years to get this. We now have a product manager who sits with our developer productivity team, because we were like, you know, do we all agree this team is doing internal product development? Yes. Do we all agree that is a particular skill set that maybe not every engineer has? Yes. And then we said, given these things, should we not have a product manager? And I think a really useful thing about that is that way we can speak the same language of business outcomes with the rest of the product organization. So it just becomes about balancing. Typically, it's about balancing near-term payback versus slightly further out. So this team, you know, that's going to pay back further out, but we've got alignment that we we use the phrase "go fast forever" at Honeycomb. Our goal is to go fast forever, and so we just sort of look at the work and go, "Hey, how are we balancing to get today against tomorrow?" But I do think that finding someone, even if you can't get that product manager on your team, finding someone who can sort of speak the same language as your product team, I think, can be the thing that really helps build that bridge.
Alex, what's the kind of product partner world like at Gorgeous?
Do we have a productivity product manager?
Well,
is that the question?
No, well, that's a question, but also just generally, how do engineering managers at Gorgeous kind of partner with their product people, and how do they help their product people understand productivity implications, that you can't ignore KTLO forever, and that there are only 24 hours in a day.
Yeah, that like having Swarmia metrics, it definitely helps, I would say. That's for sure.
I wasn't even asking you to say that.
No, but I'm not. I mean, I think it's like there's two things here. First of all, like I'm not sure if a lot of people in this room actually has to do like that reporting with software capitalization thing, which everyone I'm sure loves a lot. But actually, you need to classify like the type of work that you're doing to report on it. And if you have good labels on your issues and your PRs, guess what? Like you're gonna get good reports. So that's like one of the reasons to have that, right? And also it gives you the investment categories, right? So you can see, okay, like this team, for example, like if you have an infrastructure team and they are spending 70% of their time doing chores, right? Like maybe the next quarter you want to invest a little bit more in kind of reducing that like toil, right? So it definitely helps, and especially when there's like, hey, why do we have so many people in platform team or whatever, right? It's like, well, here's why, like we are doing all of this body of work, and it's like just easier to, because it's very hard for product managers to get into all of the intricacies and details of technical debt and everything. So I think having a more high level kind of metric helps, like kind of to create trust. What I found useful is like kind of going down up to kind of the individual issue and say, hey, here's how it actually works and how the data rolls up here. And it's like, okay, now I understand, and I'm going to use that like to schedule work and get more interested in these topics, right? Yeah, I mean, this is the difficulty of our roles, right? It's hard to, there's so many metrics at so many different levels, like finding the right one and satisfying the curiosity of everyone is, I think it's pretty hard. Thankfully, there's good tools out there. You should try Swarmia. It's great.
Wait, while we're doing the Swarmia shout-outs,
Swarmia pitch.
Put in a plug for the investment balance view has been really, really helpful for us as well.
Yeah,
which
I agree.
I think, a lot of times stakeholders can have the feeling of we're investing too much time and keep the lights on work. And then you can show them, hey, look, it's actually 75% of our time is spent on product development. And if you want us to go faster, maybe the answer is more headcount rather than please stop very occasionally refactoring something or fixing a broken test.
Max, I'm going to get back to you here in just a second. Alex, though, I'm curious. You alluded just there to there's no one metric that works for everyone. Let's talk about upwards. Like I think as far as managing air quotes downwards, there's pretty clear, like it's pretty clear the tools that we have available to us, such as like Dora and etc. But as Nathan said, like your leadership may not, like those metrics may not resonate with them so much. So Alex, first you, and then we'll go to Max on that one. What are your stakeholders asking? What are your stakeholders above, and again, air quotes, above you, asking for you to be reporting on in this productivity space? So Alex,
if we're talking about, like, let's say the board typically it's like in our startup at least, but I would say it's like just broadly, they are mostly coming from a finance background. So it's like they don't really, let's say, understand or should they really? Like, honestly, I don't think they should. So it's like, it's kind of the job when you report to the board to explain, to kind of translate all of these things into something that is understandable. Usually what they want to understand is like, how do you actually compare with the rest of the industry? So there are, I would say, like one anecdote that a lot of people who are like kind of outside of his domain really like, and which illustrates like how to think about kind of productivity metrics and so forth, is the lamppost. The drunkard and the lamppost is like a drunk guy is looking for his keys at the lamppost in a parking lot, and then there's a police like a cop coming in and says like, hey, what are you looking for the keys? And they are both looking together. After a while, like the cop asks, are you sure you lost the keys here? They say, it's like, no, I lost them back there in the park. It's like, but why are you looking for them here? It's like, because this is where the light is, right? So like that's and they all understand. It's like, okay, there's a bunch of metrics that measure developer productivity, right? Like, but they're not enough to actually encompass the whole thing. However, there are some useful ones, like cycle time is a good one, right? Like you have like DORA metrics is kind of an industry standard today. So it's like, they are not perfect. They are not ideal like for everything, but I think they give a sense. The board wants to understand, like, hey, among the industry, among the startups which are in my portfolio, right? Like, are we doing good enough, or like, can we do better? Like, is there a slope of improvements in certain things? That's what I found, that they want to feel confident that like the organization is moving in the right direction when it comes to some of these metrics. But you know, it's I would say it's like usually it's enough to just kind of have that like industry benchmark. When it comes to product managers, like you can go a little bit more deep, right? But it depends case by case. Like if there's okay, like we missed let's say the 5 cycles in a row or whatever, or they're overbooked, like you have a different conversation there. But yeah, I would say that's been my experience.
Yeah. So Max, especially in your new role, which maybe you are also still figuring out, because I don't think you started it very long ago, but what are your stakeholders looking for from you and from your efforts?
Sure. So actually, I'm so new at Capital One that I can't speak to the specifics of Capital One at all, but I can talk about what I've experienced in my career, because I've been in the metric space for a very long time. And I would say that there's different types of leaders who want different types of things, and it's not necessarily related to their position in the org chart as much as it is related to their familiarity with engineering and where they are in their data journey. So, I like to say people are sort of in different phases in terms of their understanding of data. Some people are like, what's data? I just go on whatever my opinion is. And other people are, like, I've heard about data. Can you just show me a number? Right. And then can you tell me the one magic number? And then if I know the one magic number, then everything will be fine. And I heard that it was this. Can you just tell me this number? And then you get like a demand down for like this specific one number. Tell me this specific one number. And I think the healthiest interactions that I've had with the stakeholders have been when they tell me the problems that they have, and then I work with them to understand how to use data to gain insight into those problems. And I would say the less effective experiences that I've had have been when people come without a sense of what action they're trying to take. So the stakeholders who have been the most successful at using data are the people who know what they want to do with it. And the people who have been not successful with it have been the people who come to me with just a desire or a demand for data without an intent to do something with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's and this was discussed so many times throughout the day today. Actually, there's so many callbacks to, even if you weren't here, you're making callbacks to earlier presentations. But yeah, I think the intent. I remember when I talked to Nathan on the podcast, he would talk about how people would come and they wanted data that would just prove they were right. And if their data said something else, they were going to do what they were going to do anyway. They just like would prefer to do it with some data to back them up. So I think that's. Yeah, the intent behind that data and the commitment to working on it. Like, why measure, PR throughput at the board level if you're not going to invest in improving PR throughput except to yell at people, right? And say go faster. So yeah, I think that's the different types of leaders is important, and also, like you said, making sure there is intent behind the request. Emily, I'm curious, and this will probably be the last question all around before we move on to audience questions, if there are any. Otherwise, I'll just keep asking you questions. So, Emily, one of the things that John kind of Mary talking about earlier, my cat would like attention, so they're going to knock everything off the table right now. Stay tuned for falling sounds. So they both talked about the kind of a little bit about change management. And so I'm curious from your experience, and we talked about this with Mary too, there can be a lot of FUD around rolling out a productivity program of some sort and introducing a new tool into your toolkit. And I remember talking to Mary, and she was like, "I love Swarmia. I'm getting so much out of it, but I need to help connect for the like engineering, the like engineering managers a little bit better, how they can be using it in their day to day." And so we worked on that. But it's not a small thing to introduce a new tool like this. So what was kind of your experience with bringing this in, and what conspiracy theories arose?
Yeah, this is such a good question. And I feel like no matter how much you feel like your team is like very self-aware, very mature, very evolved, like people will have these questions. They're really natural. And certainly we went through our share of them. I'll say a couple things that really helped us. The first one was, like I said, I had to sort of come up with, hey, here's the type of problem I want to solve with this. So just being a little more transparent about that, being more vocal. If you leave a vacuum, people immediately jump to the most nefarious, like, this is to look at our individual performance so people can be managed out of the company. It's like, no, like that's not what we're doing at all. I also think it was really helpful to come up with a couple of wins early on that sort of showed, hey, this is how this tool is going to make your life better as an engineer. So we had a couple of teams sort of jump in and then immediately pilot the sort of agreements around pull request review time. And that was one where people could immediately map it to, oh, there's this thing that bothers all of us, and this tool is going to help us be better at it. And so getting a win like that out of the gate was really good. And then we've also been we've really encouraged ICs on our team to request access. Like, they can just sort of go through our IT department and get access to any of the tools. And it's like, your managers are going to have accounts in this, but you can be in the tool too, and you can look at the data. So there's no secrets that we're trying to keep from you. The transparency part, I think, goes a long way.
Yeah. Max, I don't know if you've gotten to roll out a program in your past, but I'm curious if you have any experience along these lines.
Pick me up on more specifically.
Sorry. I'm not sure if you've had the occasion to introduce any sort of large change into an engineering organization, and so, but I'm guessing you have by now. So,
yes,
and then just kind of like, it could be productivity specific or not, but how do you think about bringing a new scary tool into your toolkit, or a new practice or program?
Oh yeah, sure. This has been most of my whole career. So the way that there's a few things. One of them is you always want to be solving a problem that people are aware of having. Like if you show up and because there's two ways. One problem is the conspiracy thing, but the other problem is just like you're doing a thing that doesn't seem like a real or important thing to any of the people who you're supposed to be serving. So like, I think that, for example, data products are the best for teams that have at least come to the realization that they don't know something. But if you have teams that are convinced that they know the answer, then you have a different problem to solve, and that is whatever they think the problem is. And if you try to bring them data, what will happen is you will be ignored or mocked, or you will damage your own career through like rumor mills about you. Like, why is this person doing this like useless thing for me?
Who hired this guy?
Yeah. Who hired this guy? Well, this is engineering, whatever. Like, this person's title says software engineer. What are they doing with data metrics, stuff like that? But as far as the conspiracy theory thing, one of the things that my preference is for anything that measures the output of individuals to not allow the dashboard to slice it down to the individual level. I I even feel conflicted about that, because there are times when there's useful insights to be gained. Like when you're a manager, you kind of want to know, like, hey, there is some kind of problem in my team, like there's a PR throughput issue. It'd be nice to know who is experiencing the problem, not like who is having a performance issue, but like, can I go talk to a person and ask them, what's the difficulty that you're experiencing with our developer platform? Right. I would like to know that. But and some of this depends on the maturity of the organization. So if you have a lot of inexperienced engineering managers in an organization, it's probably safer to eliminate the risk of doing performance mismanagement through metrics that are not designed to be used for performance management, and to just simply lock down the dashboard. If you feel like you have a more mature organization, then what you do is you provide guidance on how the data is supposed to be used. You publish documents, like, you put a disclaimer at the top of the dashboard that says, do not use this for performance management. As an example. But I would say it depends. You have to make a judgment call on the org based on what you think about your own organization.
Yeah. I remember when I started at Swarmia a little over 2 years ago, we had just built this view called Developer Overview. And we were very genuinely anxious about, is this a good feature or a bad feature? We had a customer who wanted it. And now we see that people, and again, maturity matters 100%. But the developer overview has really become a tool that developers can use to be like, I'm spending like 70% of my time on KTLO, even though the team is only spending 20% of its time. Like that seems like a mismatch. And also using it to see at review time simply as like a brag document kind of thing. It's a record of all the work that you've done. And we also have customers who don't want that view available because maybe their organization isn't ready for it. So I think that's a really, that like, how deep do you go is a really interesting conversation. Alex, how have you kind of approached that, not over-indexing on the individual, on individual performance and keeping people focused on the team?
I would say my experience is similar to Emily's. So it's like, the way when there's like, let's say, a new engineering manager, or there's a new team which is like getting onboarded on Swarmia, or the initial ones, it's like, can you at the next, let's say the next all hands that team has, it's like, hey, let's talk about like some working agreements, like how like we work across time zone, for example. Like there's a team which has like multiple time zones. Like what is a reasonable like pull request review time? And people talk about it, right? So it's like, how many issues like or projects do we want to have at the same time? So it really gives you a template to drive some of these conversations about like how do we want to work as a team? And I think and Swarmia is just like available there for you to set it up and kind of drive the conversation. The other thing that I didn't expect it, but it was a nice surprise, was the Slack notifications seem to be like, developers really like it from the Swarmia one compared to I think GitHub or anything else out there. So that was also something that's like kind of drove adoption quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, in our team, it wasn't like a hard sell. Like but I think one of the reasons why is also what Max was saying, that it's explicitly stated that it cannot never be used as a KPI or something like a performance thing to improve in your particular team. What can be is like reducing number of incidents, reducing number of alerts, errors, like that type of stuff. Like you can like kind of improve and like quality stuff, but like not, I would say it's like writing code faster or whatever. Like, I mean, now we got to talk about ConvAI and developers productivity. Right?
You missed the presentation a couple hours ago. We covered it. Well, good. You don't.
Yeah, I wasn't here.
You stay here for 3 hours.
But yeah, that's another fun thing that's going on right now. It's like, well, what was good is no longer good anymore. You got to go faster because, like, guess what? Like, you can write code faster, which means like the productivity increases significantly, right? And then there's all of the repercussions of that statement. But yeah, I would say this.
Yeah. This last question is a free for all, so whoever wants it, jump on it. I think it goes to everything we've been talking about here. How do you ensure that any metrics come with contextual information so that you can have an informed discussion about the metrics and make informed decisions based on them? Emily, you're making facial expressions. I call on you.
Oh, it's a good question, and it's really hard to do just through data, right? It's not a problem that more data solves. I'll say I think that when we use this sort of data, a lot of times the way that we start the conversation is with groups of managers together. So like I sit down with my directors and we review the information in Swarmia like once a month, and then I know our manager subteams do that as well. And so that's the chance to interpret the data and bring some talk track to the table around it, rather than just, it's not just me alone in a room late at night looking at the dashboard and going, that number's concerning. It gives us this immediate chance to dive into a conversation, and then hopefully sometimes you see a number that looks concerning in isolation, and then as soon as you understand, this team is off doing customer interviews for a week, great, perfect, love it. So just try to get the people together.
Yeah. A metric is not the whole answer to a question. It is an indicator, and you have to look at it. You have to go investigate it. The problem, though, is that most teams that I have interacted with in my career are not at that place in their data journey. And so like, they're not even at a place where like a lot of them are at a place where they're like, I've never looked at a dashboard. I've never looked at numbers around engineering productivity ever in my whole life. What is a dashboard? How do I read a graph? I mean, and not like, how do I what do X and Y mean, but like, how do I look at a trend? Like, why would I care about a trend as an example?
What is a trend, right?
What is it? Yeah. What is a trend, right? Like, why do I care if that graph is going up or going down over time, as opposed to just what the current number is? Right. And so generally it's like, I think you get there mostly by having somebody, you have to have, my experience is there has to be some champion who's close to the process that the team uses. So there's always some process that somebody uses to look at data or engage with data. And at least if you're talking about like metrics that you want to drive from a management level, not like data that you're looking at on a day-to-day basis to make engineering decisions. And hopefully you have a champion who sits inside of that process, some project manager who understands how metrics work and can help guide the process. And if it's a small organization, then it can be you, the metrics expert, or the person who owns the dashboard, and you can go around to all the teams and do it. But if you're in a very large multi-thousand person organization, you can't be there in all those meetings. And you have to somehow like federate that skill throughout the business.
Well, this is me switching to the thank you slide because we have run out of time. So thanks to all of you for joining us. Love the conversation. I'm looking forward to more like you said, Max, I can do this for hours. So thanks everyone, and have a great rest of your day wherever you may be.